A man stands where two roads split apart in the last light of the day. Behind him, the town. In front of him, a fork in the dirt. One path bending down toward a cluster of lamps and low voices, the other climbing out toward open country. And from both directions, at the very same moment, a voice is calling his name. He cannot tell which one to trust. This is where the book of Proverbs begins. Not with a rule, not with a warning, with a person standing at a fork in the road, hearing two voices and having to choose. Now, watch what most people do with Proverbs. They treat it like a jar of fortune cookies. Open it anywhere, pull out a line, take the advice, close it again. And the lines are good, so it seems to work. But this is not a book of clever advice. This is not a collection of life hacks for getting ahead. This is a map. And the first chapter is the legend that tells you how to read every road on it. 33 verses. That is all chapter 1 is. 33 short lines, written down roughly 3,000 years ago, in the reign of a king named Solomon, around 950 years before Christ. You could read the whole thing in about 4 minutes. And here's the strange thing almost everyone misses. Those 33 verses are not the answers. They are the question. Solomon did not open his book of wisdom with wise sayings at all. He opened it by telling you what the whole book is for, and then he set two voices calling from two directions and made you stand between them. Reading the rest of Proverbs without chapter 1 is like being handed the answer key to a test you have never seen. You have all the right answers and no idea what the questions were, so we are going to do something simple. We are going to walk through chapter 1, one voice at a time, and I'm going to show you something. The pattern hiding in these 33 verses, one command, two voices, two roads, one choice, is not just the shape of Proverbs. It is the shape of the entire Bible. From the two trees in the garden to the last invitation on the last page, it is the same fork and the same road, and the same two voices calling your name. If you understand Proverbs chapter 1, you understand the whole story. Let us start at the beginning. So open the scroll to the very first line, chapter 1, verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. That is the byline. A king, the son of a king, writing down what he has learned. But watch what he does next. He does not start dispensing wisdom. He stops to tell you what the whole book is going to do for you. Verses 2 through 6 are not advice at all. They are the instruction page, the part everyone skips. Listen to how he lays it out. Verse 2. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. Verse 4. To give subtlety to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. And then verse 5, one line that changes who this book is for. A wise man will hear and will increase learning. Notice what he just did. He said this book is for the simple, the young, the one who does not know yet. And then he said it is also for the wise. The one who already knows will read this and know more. That is a strange thing to promise. Most instruction is for beginners. Solomon says the beginner and the master pick up the same book and both walk away with more. And that tells you something about wisdom right at the start. It is not a wall you climb once and are done with. It is a road with no end of it. Now, here's the first place we have to slow down, because this is the word almost everyone gets wrong. Wisdom. When we hear it, we think of something like cleverness, being sharp, knowing the trick, having the answer, staying 2 steps ahead. We treat Proverbs like a manual for winning, how to handle money, how to read people, how to get ahead without getting burned. And the advice is in there. But that is not what Solomon means by the word. Look at verse 6. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. Wisdom here is not a life hack. It is the ability to read reality correctly, to look at a situation and see what is actually going on underneath it, to hear two voices and know which one is lying. Cleverness gets you the trick. Wisdom tells you whether you should be doing the trick at all. Hold on to that, because the whole chapter is about to test it. Then verse 8, the tone shifts. It gets personal. My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. This is the first voice in the book. And notice where it comes from. Not a temple, not a school. The kitchen table, a father and a mother talking to a child they love. Before Proverbs says one word about God, before it defines a single term, it puts you back in the room where you first learned right from wrong. Wisdom does not begin as a lecture. It begins as a family trying to hand something down. And then Solomon gives that handing down a shape you can see. Verse 9. For they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. Now stop on that word chains, because that is not what it sounds like. We hear chains and we think of a leash, something that holds you back, ties you down, keeps you small. But that is not the picture. In Solomon's world, a chain about the neck was gold. It was a garland on the head and jewelry at the throat, the mark of someone honored, someone who belonged, someone lifted up. He is saying the discipline your parents gave you was never a collar. It was a medal. You just could not see it while you were wearing it. So that is the instruction page. This book will teach you to read reality. It is for the beginner and the master. And it starts at the kitchen table with love dressed up like jewelry. But before any of that works, before a single proverb does you any good, there is one line the whole thing hangs on. Verse 7. This is the hinge. Everything before it was set up, everything after it swings on this one line. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. That is it. That is the sentence the whole book is built on. And it is so familiar that most people read right past it without feeling the weight of what it claims. So let us slow all the way down, because there are two words in there we have to get right, or the rest of the Bible will not open. The first word is beginning, not beginning like a warm-up you graduate out of, beginning like a doorway. It is the frame you step through to get into the room where knowledge lives. Solomon is not saying the fear of the Lord is one nice ingredient among many. He is saying it is the door. You do not get the knowledge and then, if you feel like it, add some reverence on top. You walk through the reverence or you never get into the room at all. Think of a combination lock. It does not matter how many of the numbers you have right. If the first one is wrong, the lock stays shut. Fear of the Lord is the first number. Get it wrong, and everything else you know just sits there, useless, on the outside of a door that will not open. Which brings us to the second word. And this is the one almost everyone hears backwards. Fear. We hear fear of the Lord, and we picture cowering, a child flinching from a raised hand, a God you tiptoe around, hoping not to set him off. And people spend years quietly resenting a Bible they think is asking them to be scared. But that is not the fear Solomon means. Look at the other half of the verse. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. The opposite of fearing God here is not being brave. It is being casual, contemptuous, treating God like he does not matter. So the fear of the Lord is the opposite of a shrug. It is taking God so seriously that you reorder your entire life around him being real. It is not the fear that makes you run away. It is the awe that makes you finally pay attention. And this is not just a Proverbs idea. It is stitched through the whole Bible. Job, wrestling in the ash heap, lands in the exact same place. Job, chapter 28, verse 28. The fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. Solomon says it again later in his own book, chapter 9, verse 10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Same door, same first number on the lock. The writers of Scripture keep coming back to this one sentence because they cannot get past it. It is the threshold of everything. And notice what that does to the word wisdom, the word we were just untangling. If the fear of the Lord is the beginning, then wisdom is not a skill you develop. It is a relationship you enter. You can memorize every proverb in the book, run the numbers on every decision, out-argue everyone in the room, and still be, in the exact language of verse 7, a fool, because you started at the wrong door. This is why you can meet people who are brilliant and shattered, sharp, and going nowhere. It is not that they lack information. It is that they built the whole house without ever walking through the front door. So let us catch our breath and see where we are. Solomon opened with an instruction page. This book will teach you to read reality, and it starts at the kitchen table. Then he set the hinge, the fear of the Lord, the door you walk through before any of it works. One command standing in front of everything else. If this is helping you see this chapter in a way you have not before, that is exactly what this channel is for. Subscribe, leave a comment, and send this to someone who needs to hear it. Because now the chapter does something you might not expect. It goes quiet on the advice. And it lets you hear the first voice at the fork in the road. Now the chapter does something strange. Before it lets wisdom say a word, it lets you hear the other voice first. The voice from the low road, down where the lamps are. Verse 10. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. And then Solomon does something a lesser teacher would never do. He hands the microphone to the tempters. He lets them make their whole pitch, in their own words, so you can hear exactly how good it sounds. Verse 11. If they say, "Come with us, let us lay wait for blood, let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause." Come with us. Two words. That is the entire seduction, and it has not changed in 3,000 years. Not come do evil, not come ruin your life, just come with us. You are alone at the fork in the road, the light is going, and here is a group of people who want you, who saved you a place. The pull is not the crime, the pull is the belonging. And listen to what they promise. Verse 13. We shall find all precious substance, we shall fill our houses with spoil. Then verse 14. And this is the line that gives the whole thing away. Cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. One purse. Everybody's money in the same bag. It sounds like generosity. It sounds like brotherhood. But think about what a shared purse actually does when the money is stolen. It means no one can point at anyone else. Every hand is in the same bag, so every hand is equally dirty. It is the way a gang binds you, not with a contract, but with shared guilt. Once your hand is in that purse, you cannot walk away clean, and they know it. The belonging was the trap all along. And here is what should stop you. Solomon knows this pitch from the inside. This is a man who, as a young king, once knelt at a place called Gibeon around 967 years before Christ, and God offered him anything he wanted. He did not ask for riches. He did not ask for a long life. He asked for wisdom, for the discernment to tell right from wrong. He had climbed the throne only 3 years earlier, around 970 before Christ, and he already understood that a full purse was the one thing that could not save him. That is the man warning you here. He is not guessing. And he is not the only voice from the ancient world sounding this alarm. Long before Solomon, back around 12 to 1300 years before Christ, Egyptian teachers were writing collections of instruction to their own sons. A famous one called the Instruction of Amenemope runs remarkably close to parts of Proverbs. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing much later, records that Solomon's reputation for wisdom was known far beyond Israel. And this book did not even reach you in one piece all at once. Around 700 years before Christ, more than 2 centuries after Solomon died around 930 before Christ, scribes described in Proverbs as the men of Hezekiah were still copying out his sayings so they would not be lost. So this is not a small local book. It stands inside the oldest tradition of wise fathers warning their children in the whole ancient world. But here's the difference. Every one of those Egyptian instructions taught a young man how to succeed. Only this one anchors the whole thing to the fear of the Lord. The others tell you how to walk the road. Solomon tells you which road you are on. And then he pulls back the curtain on the low road. Verse 16. For their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. These are not people drifting into trouble. They are running toward it. And Solomon gives you an image you cannot unsee. Verse 17. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird. Any bird with eyes watches you string up the net and simply flies around it. No bird walks into a trap it can see. And that sets up the punchline, the thing the tempters never tell you about themselves. Verse 18. And they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. Read that again. They set the ambush. They spread the net. And the one who falls into it is them. Them. The trap they built for the innocent closes on the builders. Verse 19 puts the label on it. So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain, which taketh away the life of the owners thereof. The greed does not just take, it turns and consumes the greedy. The low road does not lead somewhere and then get dangerous. The low road is the danger. The voice that says, "Come with us," is inviting you into a net it has already spread for itself. That is the first voice. Warm, welcoming, and walking straight off a cliff. And then, out of all that noise, a second voice. And then, out of all that noise, a second voice. But notice where it comes from. Not from a temple, not from a throne room, safe and elevated above the mess. Verse 20. Wisdom crieth without, she uttereth her voice in the streets. And verse 21. She crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates. In the city she uttereth her words. Stop and picture that. In an ancient city, the gate was not just a door and a wall. It was the busiest place there was, the market, the courtroom, the town square, all in one. It was where deals were struck, and the poor came begging, and the accused were dragged to be judged. It was loud and crowded and low. And that is exactly where wisdom plants herself. Not in a quiet study waiting for the worthy to come find her. She is out in the street, at the top of her lungs, in the most crowded and desperate corner of the city, shouting to anyone who will turn their head. The first voice whispered, "Come with us from the shadows." This voice is screaming in broad daylight where nobody can miss it. And who is she shouting at? Verse 22. How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? There it is. That word again. The simple, not the stupid, the undecided. The ones standing at the fork who have not chosen yet. Wisdom looks straight at the person frozen between two voices and says, "How long are you going to just stand there?" And then she makes an offer so generous it should stop you cold. Verse 23. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I will pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. Turn around, just turn, and I will pour myself out into you. She is not asking you to earn your way in. She is asking you to stop walking the wrong direction. Now I have to be honest with you about something, because this is where teachers often pretend to know more than they do. Who is she? This woman crying in the streets. Is she just a poetic way of describing an idea, wisdom given a voice so it lands harder? Is she a picture of one of God's own attributes? Or is she something more, an early shadow of someone who had not stepped into the story yet? This image had a long life. Around 180 years before Christ, a writer named Ben Sira was still putting these very words in wisdom's mouth, still letting her stand up and speak for herself. And I will tell you plainly, the church has argued about who she is for centuries. In the year 325, at a council in a town called Nicaea, this exact question tore the church nearly in half. A teacher named Arius pointed to how wisdom speaks in a later chapter and argued it proved the Son of God was a created being. A man named Athanasius stood against him and said, "No, you are misreading her." That fight was real and serious, and it was fought over these very verses. So I am not going to stand here and tell you I have settled what the greatest minds of the church could not. But here is what the text itself makes unmistakable. Whoever she is, she does not speak with borrowed authority. Listen to her again. I will pour out my spirit unto you. No mere teacher talks like that. No personified virtue promises to pour out a spirit. She speaks with the voice of God himself. And centuries later, when the New Testament finally names the wisdom of God out loud, it does not point to a concept. It points to a person. It calls Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. And once you see that, verse 24 will break your heart. Listen, I have called, and ye refused. I have stretched out my hand, and no man regarded. Picture her, standing in the crowded gate, in the noise and the dust, with her hand stretched out toward a street full of people. And every one of them walks past. Nobody even turns their head. Now carry that image forward, all the way to a hill outside Jerusalem, and look at the wisdom of God with his hand stretched out again, this time nailed open, still reaching for a crowd that mostly walked past. The same posture, the same reaching, the same hand held out to people who would not regard it. Do you hear that? The voice crying in the street with her arms open is the same voice that would one day hold those arms open on a cross. And that is what makes the warning that comes next so heavy. Because wisdom does not only offer, she warns. Verse 28. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. There is a point, she says, where the roads have run all the way out, where you finally turn to look for the voice you spent your life ignoring, and the street is empty. That is a real warning, and I will not soften it. The invitation is not endless, but hold it next to the very last line of the chapter, and hear the door still standing open. Verse 33. But whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from fear of evil. Whoever listens, not whoever earns it, not whoever was never simple, whoever right now turns their head toward the voice in the street, and is finally, quietly, safe. Two voices. One from the shadows, promising belonging and spreading a net. One in the daylight, arms open, promising to pour herself out. That is the whole chapter, and it is so much bigger than one chapter. Now step back from the page, all the way back, because everything we just walked through, one command, two voices, two roads, one choice, is not a pattern that lives only in Proverbs chapter 1. It is the pattern the whole Bible is built on. Once you have seen it here, you cannot stop seeing it anywhere. Go back to the very beginning. The garden. Two trees, and a command about which one is life. And then a second voice slides in from the shadows, and listen to how it opens. Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. Yea, hath God said. There it is already. The come with us voice, questioning the first voice, offering a shortcut to belonging and knowledge. Two trees. Two voices. One choice. The whole Bible opens on the exact fork we just stood at. Run it forward. Moses, at the end of his life, sets the same fork in front of a whole nation. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19. I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life. Open the Songbook of Israel, and it is the very first thing you read. Psalm 1, verse 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. One road, and the wrong company on the other. And when Jesus himself teaches, he does not invent a new shape. He picks up this one. Matthew chapter 7. Wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. And then, straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life. Two gates, two roads. The exact fork from Proverbs 1, now standing in front of you with the voice of the Son of God. And it does not stop until the last page of the book. Turn to the final chapter of Revelation, the last invitation in the entire Bible, and hear who is still calling. Revelation chapter 22, verse 17. And the Spirit and the bride say, Come. And whosoever will, let him take the water of life freely. And listen, it is her. It is the same voice from the crowded gate, the same arms still open, the same word, Come. But now the net spreader's stolen, Come with us, has been answered forever by a better come. The wisdom crying in the street in Proverbs 1 is still crying on the last page of Scripture, and she never once stopped reaching. So this is not a book of clever advice. It was never a jar of fortune cookies. It is one long invitation, in one persistent voice, calling you by name from the first fork to the last. And here's the part that should undo you. Think again about where that voice chose to stand. Not in the temple. Not on a throne, clean and far away. In the street, at the gate. Down in the loudest, lowest, most desperate corner of the city, where the beggars and the accused stood. Wisdom did not wait for you to climb up to her. She came all the way down to where you actually were. And when the wisdom of God finally stepped into the story with a face and a name, that is exactly what he did. He did not stay on the throne. He came down to a stable, to a carpenter's town, to a dinner table full of the wrong people, and finally to a cross, because in him, as the New Testament says, are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. The voice was never shouting down at you from above. It came down to the fork in the road and stood there in the dust beside you. So let me leave you with 3 things to carry out of this one chapter. The first is about the whole Bible. You do not need a secret decoder to read Scripture. You need to hear the 2 voices. Every page is some version of this one fork. A voice from the shadows saying, Come with us, and a voice in the daylight with its arms open. Learn to tell them apart in Proverbs 1, and you can hear them everywhere. The second is about you. Wisdom is not information you collect. It is a voice you answer. That is why the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Because if you start anywhere else, you can be the smartest person in the room and still be, in the language of verse 7, a fool. You do not think your way to the front door. You turn toward the voice and walk through it. And the third is the one I most want you to hear. Remember the man at the fork in the road, at the start, frozen between 2 voices he could not tell apart. That was you when we began. But you are not standing there confused anymore. You can name the voices now. You know the one from the shadows and the one with the open hands, and you know which one has been calling your name this whole time. From the 2 trees, to the crowded gate, to the last page of the book. Verse 28 warned that there is a point where the street goes empty, but that point is not today. Today, the arms are still open. Today, the word is still, Come. And she is still, right now, calling you by name. Whoever listens shall dwell safely. If this opened up Proverbs 1 for you, if you will never read this chapter the same way again, then do one thing. Send it to someone standing at their own fork in the road who cannot tell the voices apart yet. Subscribe so we can keep walking through Scripture like this together. And until next time, may you hear the right voice and may you turn toward it.